Hi, I'm James, and today on the desk I have a laptop from a brand which I have used a lot in the past, but never one of their laptops, and that is the MSI Modern 14 laptop. This is one of the latest generations of these, which is available with the 11th gen Core i3-1115 G4 processor, and this particular model is a 8GB of RAM and 256GB SSD model, which came in at £330. It is currently available for a little bit more than this in the UK, and there is a link in the description below to where you can currently buy it. So, taking a look inside the box, and we have in here our power supply, which is fairly compact, sort of a square rounded edge, similar to what you often find with Asus laptops, and our UK power lead. Then underneath the laptop we have our quick start guide and warranty bits and pieces, and then in here we have the laptop itself. With the machine on the desk, we have this carbon grey finish to it, which is in cold aluminium here. We have quite a nice little MSI logo, not too obvious and quite modern looking. But overall, I'd say fairly attractive for what it is from the top here. Like I say, metal finish. Looking inside, the palm rest, also metal. And flicking things over, we have a moulded plastic base. Now obviously this same carbon grey finish, so all matching. What we do have is some fairly extensive grates here for the fan and also over the heatsink here. And we also have a pair of exhaust or outlets for the speakers, which are 2 watts each, so not the most powerful, but pretty good for this sort of budget spec of laptop. One thing that is a bit disappointing is here we have a factory seal over one of the screws. Because this machine is already going out to a customer soon, I'm going to choose not to break that seal, so I won't be doing an upgrade video on this. But my research tells me we have a DIMM slot inside, so memory can be upgraded, and an M2 2280 SSD, which again can be upgraded. Taking a look around the ports on the laptop, and on the left hand side we have our DC jack. We have an HDMI port which MSI specs say supports 4K at 60Hz, so should be HDMI 2.0. We have a USB-C slot port here, which having tested it does not do USB PD for charging the laptop, nor does it do DisplayPort, I believe. So this is purely for connecting devices such as your phone or other USB-C devices. It will not do those additional functions for the laptop. And we also have a micro SD card reader. Turning around to the other side, and we have power and battery indicator lights, a pair of USB-A 3.2 Gen 1, so 5 gigabit per second ports, and a headphone jack. We can also see that when we open up the laptop, this section of the chassis here folds in and lifts the laptop to give additional airflow for cooling. This is good when using it on a desk, but of course won't help if you're using it on a fabric surface where those can still be blocked. Looking inside the machine, and we can see that we have our keyboard here complete with backlighting. There is no fingerprint reader on this, so you are limited to password or PIN. I quite like having a fingerprint scanner, but this won't necessarily be a showstopper for some. What I am not a huge fan of, however, is this keyboard layout. We sort of have a quasi UK US layout, so things like the slash over here on the wrong side. I'd normally expect here we have a half height enter key, not the full height that you would normally associate with a proper UK layout. Obviously, to achieve sort of the price point here, MSI haven't wanted to customise the cutouts in the keyboard for different regions, and that's a little bit disappointing, but I can see why. it would just perhaps make this a bit of a hard sell for me personally, but I can be a bit picky on these things. Things that I do like, however, is, so for the functions here, we have some nice features, like we have a light which shows us if the microphone is off, particularly useful these days if you're doing a lot of Zoom meetings, and we have a webcam on off. There is no indicator light for this, but it does, with the MSI software, give you an indicator on screen. The backlight has 3 levels of lighting, so off, on, and then 2 dimmer levels. And one thing that is very nice, so that function lock, we can hit that, and at that point we get the ability to refresh pages and so on. It is quite nice to have that, because not everyone likes to have using the volume and brightness and so on as defaults. Having that function lock, particularly for me, is really nice, and a nice alternative to being able to flip it in the BIOS, which I don't think you can do on this. I couldn't see the option when I checked for it. The screen itself is a 14-inch 1080p panel, and MSI say that this is an IPS level screen, so it may not actually be IPS, but it is 250 nits of brightness, which is again pretty good for this price point of machine. And in my testing, I thought the viewing angles were perfectly reasonable. It's certainly not sort of a low-cost TN panel. I don't know whether it is genuinely an IPS or WSVA or anything like that, but perfectly acceptable again at this price point. The bezels around the display are quite nice and thin, particularly down the sides. Even at the top here, where we have the 720p webcam, it is not too tall here. We do have quite a significant bezel at the bottom, but a lot of that is handled by the fact that the bottom of this top panel does fold around under the screen. The touchpad is reasonably well sized in the chassis. It could perhaps be a tiny bit larger, but it has a good feel. And when we go in to the options here, we can see it supports all the usual Windows 10 or Windows 11 multi-touch features. This machine is of course eligible to upgrade to Windows 11 and has the necessary TPM and compatible processor. Looking at some of the specifics of the machine, and we can see that it ships with Windows 10 Home, and it is the 20H2 version out of the box. Obviously this is somewhat behind and will update fairly quickly with Windows Update once connected to the internet. One thing which I was not pleased to see, but which is not unexpected, is that we have Norton Security pre-installed on the machine. I would be removing this straight out the box. I would generally prefer to use Windows Defender than Norton Security. We also have Music Maker Jam, if that is of interest to you. Some MSI Center software, but otherwise not a huge amount of pre-installed software. Looking at some other tools to check over the machine, and CPU-Z here confirms that we have the i3-1115G4, and that our memory is a single DDR4 8GB module running at 3200 speed. So this could be paired with the internal DIMM slot for an additional 8 or 16 gigabytes of memory. I'd probably go to 16 with an i3 would be sensible, and would also give you a balanced dual channel configuration. Otherwise, the SSD in this system is a Kingston 256GB drive, and this is a PCIe 3.0 x4 device. And using Crystal Disk Mark, we can see that this gives read speeds of 2.5 gigabytes per second and write speeds of just over 1.2 gigabytes per second. This is a definite step up from what you typically see in similarly priced machines with 4 gigs of RAM and the 128 gigabyte SSDs. This is significantly above what you'd expect to see in like SATA SSDs or those lower cost NVMe 128 gig SSDs. One area that does impress is that the machine is very quiet in general use, and even when we ramp up the processor consumption to absolute full, we can see that while the noise level increases, MSI have done a very good job on the thermal design of this machine. So running Cinebench R23 here, and we can see with the processor running up to 23 watts, maybe a little bit higher, in that boost mode, and the processor running at 4.1 gigahertz. Even with this, we are not seeing a rapid jump up in processor temperature. The noise has increased, as you may well be able to hear, but not to excessive levels, and temperatures are generally kept around 70 degrees. At a time where it's really not uncommon to see processor temperatures rising into the 90s, this is actually really nice. The machine is obviously keeping the thermals well under control, and it is also quick when we end the test to dissipate that heat, bring the temperatures back under control, and then, as appropriate, reduce that fan noise back to really nice low levels. And now we can see we are back to near silence from it. Elsewhere, we can see that this machine is equipped with the smaller battery for this particular system, with a 37.8 watt hour battery. This is obviously not huge, but should still give you sort of 5+ hours of use from the machine. So overall, given the price point of this machine, I've got to say I'm really quite impressed. It has a nice feel to the chassis, build quality feels perfectly decent. The specifications for 330, 340 pound are really good, with the 8 gigs of RAM and a pretty quick SSD in there relative to a lot of similarly priced machines I've looked at. The screen appears good quality, and we have good connectivity, backlit keyboard. The USB-C is a little bit disappointing, and we could have a bigger battery, but these are features that we do expect at a higher price point. So if you're looking for a well-priced, fairly compact laptop, then this is certainly one that I would consider. So I hope you found this video interesting. This obviously has just been a quick first look at the Modern 14. Unfortunately, I had someone who needed a laptop quickly, so I've only had a short amount of time to play with this one. I haven't been able to look at the upgrade options and so on. But if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to leave, do put them below. It's really helpful if you do. Hit like if you found this video useful, and subscribe if you'd like to see more as we post them. Thanks for watching.